Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. So in today's episode, we're going to avoid ambiguous behavior. And so what brought this on, what made me think about this was I took a leadership training class many years ago, and it was done by the head of HR at Goldman Sachs, who was also a professor at the Harvard Business School. And he said our training is something that always stuck with me. It sticks. This was decades ago that I took this training, and he said all ambiguous behavior is interpreted negatively. And I just really struck me as, man, I think he's really right about that. It makes a lot of sense. And I know, speaking in absolutes, not all ambiguous behavior is interpreted negatively, but there is such a thing as negative interpretation bias. And I think many people are subject to negative interpretation bias, which is the tendency to appraise ambiguous stimuli as threatening, and that shapes their emotions around many, many things. So when they're presented with ambiguous behavior, many people assume the worst. They think the worst is going to happen. So think about, you are walking down the street and see your friend and you say hi. You don't notice that they're distracted on their phone and they just give you, oh, hey. You think, are they mad at me? Did I do something? Did they not want to talk to me? When all they were doing was looking at their phone and they were distracted. But because their behavior is ambiguous, you take it a negative view of it. So very normal. It happens a lot. And as leaders and as people who want to kind of set the standard and really improve our lives and connect with other people, we want to think of ways that we can stop that from happening. So how do we stop ambiguous behavior from happening? What are some things that we can focus on in our interactions with people when we're communicating and avoid this ambiguous type behavior? So we're very clear about what we're trying to accomplish, very clear about what our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our intentions are. I think it's a terribly important thing to kind of focus on. So the first communicate clearly. I know that sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised, and I'm guilty of this like anybody else is. We assume that because we think something in our heads, that other people can interpret those thoughts or hear those thoughts when we don't actually say them out loud. You want to be very specific and very intentional in your communication, which includes asking questions. Ask clarifying questions of the audience that you're trying to communicate with, whether that's one person, three people, 100 people. Generally, when I'm giving a presentation or I'm in front of a group, I will ask questions. Does that make sense? Do I need to elaborate on that? Do you want me to explain it and try to explain it in a different way? I'll ask people specific questions. So if I gave you this information, explain to me how you would react to that information based on what we just talked about. So asking those questions and communicating very clearly, very directly, and I don't mean short, I don't mean aggressive, I mean clear. Just don't mince words. Say what you're thinking, say what you mean, ask questions that you want answers to, and be very direct about it. And along those same lines, use standard terminology. Don't use jargon. Don't use similes or metaphors. Don't beat around the bush. Use phrases that everyone understands. I've got one son that will do this. He'll whip out, some word from medieval times, and I'll be like, "What are you talking about? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. Could you just use normal English? Speak to me like a normal human being in the 21st century." Avoid that type of communication or that type of language, and you're going to find that you hit the mark way more often than you don't. Don't use jargon or terminology if you're dealing with people that aren't in whatever specific field you're in. I deal with insurance companies a lot, and they'll use all sorts of acronyms. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That was just an alphabet salad that you threw at me. Could you explain it in English, like to somebody that doesn't have any idea what insurance is about? Because I don't have any idea what insurance is about, but I'm responsible for a pretty significant spend on insurance for our company, and I need to understand it before I can make good decisions. So use standard terminology. Avoid grouping prepositional phrases. They. So I have an example here. So the difference between each subscriber to a newspaper in Phoenix and each newspaper subscriber who lives in Phoenix are very different. You can live in New York City and subscribe to a newspaper in Phoenix. What we're trying to talk about in this particular instance is Phoenix residents who subscribe to newspapers. And so you want to be very specific. If you avoid using prepositions, he, she, they, it's very easy for those to get mixed up with um, who you're talking to or who you're referring to, the subject that you're trying to refer to. So avoid doing those things. Next, have regular check-ins. Regularly communicate with people that are important for you to be on the same page with. Whether that's your spouse, whether it's your kids, whether it's your coworkers, doesn't matter. Have regularly scheduled check-ins with those folks. It helps identify gaps and misunderstandings. It gives people a chance to ask clarifying questions. You can reassess how things are going. You can reassess how you're communicating with each other. Regular check-ins are a great thing to avoid ambiguous behavior. Build a network of advisors. This is a great one. I have lots of people. I'll say, "Hey, I was thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? Tell me what's good, what could go bad. What do you think about when I say that? How would you receive it if I said it this way?" I worked at a place where we did a lot of negotiation, and we would do a mock negotiation. One of us would take the role of the other side, and or a group of us would take a role on the other side, and a group of us would take our side, and we would literally do a negotiation and try to kind of dry run how we thought things would work in the room. And we were generally very well prepared, and we were generally pretty successful in our negotiations because we were ready. And we had people that we could bounce things off of. I wouldn't say this that way. I would avoid using this word because it triggers emotion. I would avoid saying this because it could lead down this path, and we don't want to open that door. And having advisors that will be honest with you. I think it was Mark Twain that said, and it could have been somebody else, but somebody said, um, there's nothing more valuable than having smart people in your network who will argue with you. It's a great way to do it. I read the book, A Team of Rivals, about Abraham Lincoln, and his cabinet was made up largely of his rivals. Everyone in his cabinet wanted to be president, or thought they should be president, or thought he wasn't a great president. And a couple of them were actively planning on running against him in the 1864 election. And through a series of circumstances, largely which were controlled by Lincoln, that didn't happen. But it was smart to have those people on his team because they thought about things differently than he did, and they were willing to argue with him. And so it really helped him kind of think through problems and come with a kind of a 360-degree view of what it was they were trying to solve. So a network of advisors, terribly important. Take an active approach to decision making. So, you want to be intimately involved in big decisions in particular. So identify what you don't know about an option. Maybe maybe option A seems good to you because you understand option A really well. But there's option B on the table, and even though you don't understand it well, there are several people that feel very strongly that option B is the way to go. And just because you don't understand why option B would be a great way to go doesn't mean they're wrong. And so you have to have an open mind and think, hey, um, maybe option B is the best. Even though I don't know X, Y, or Z, people that I have a lot of respect for and that are very smart are telling me that I need to consider option B because of these variables. And you can't be closed minded when it comes to those things. So being intentional about those conversations, communicating with others around those things, terribly important to avoid ambiguity and I always call it eyes wide open. I just want everyone to be eyes wide open. It might work, it might not work, but I want everyone to understand the pros, the cons, the risks, the rewards that we're discussing here so we can make good decisions together. Next, assume best intentions. And this one's, it's amazing to me how often this one does not happen. So if someone makes a statement, and it can be assumed two ways, one is good and one is bad, many people will assume that you meant the bad first. I think that's a foolish way to approach it. I think you should assume that it's good and then kind of suss out what it is that they're trying to say and confirm that their intentions are good, but give them the benefit of the doubt before you start down a path of arguing or fighting or actively pushing back. Not a good way to go. It's better to assume best intentions because it's going to lead to more open, honest, and direct conversation, which is how you actually resolve gaps in communication and resolve conflict. You talk through those things. And if you create an environment where someone is uncomfortable talking through them because they feel like they're attacking you, or they feel like you've judged them, you're not going to have very much success. It's one of the reasons I've been successful as a leader is people feel very comfortable coming to me with issues or challenges or problems because they know I'm not going to judge them. I'm going to listen with an open mind and try to come up with a solution that solves the problem and brainstorm with the team. So next, read the room. Um, Listen to what people say. Don't listen to how they say it, because many times people are emotional about subjects. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong in the conclusion that they're drawing or the point that they're trying to make, but it can get lost in translation if they're really excited or really aggressive, or they're speaking loudly, they're speaking quickly, they're yelling, they're crying. Just because those things are going on doesn't mean that there's not a very valid message that they're trying to deliver. So try to listen to the words that they're actually saying. I was not a big fan of President Obama, a very intelligent guy, clearly, and one of the best politicians in a while. And he was excellent at this. He could deliver a message and be condescending to people, but because of the way he did it, and he was so warm and so open, people accepted it. I don't think they listened to what he said. I think they listened to how he said it. And he was, he's a master at it. I think he's fabulous at it. But you got to listen to what people say, not necessarily how they say it, because a lot can get lost in translation if you allow that to happen. And then last, just be present and focused when you're communicating with others, because if you're multitasking and someone says something important and you didn't quite catch it and you go, yeah, it's a good point. They're going to feel like, hey, I thought I made a really good point there. And you just seem to kind of brush it off, or you didn't take it seriously, or you didn't seem impacted by it. Put your phone down. Don't try to do emails and have a conversation at the same time. Um, be fully present and focused when you're communicating with other people. Be in the moment and really listen to what they're saying to you and how they're saying it, so that you can kind of get the full scope of the communication that they're trying to communicate to you. So I think those are all terribly important. So think about all those things, guys. It helps you avoid ambiguous behavior. And when you're direct, when you're succinct, get to the point. Don't be flowery and use a bunch of big words. Be real clear and real intentional about what you're trying to communicate. And it'll really help you avoid those situations where someone's able to, and able isn't necessarily the right word, but they mistakenly hear something different than what you intend for them to hear. A lot of it is in how you deliver the message, and making sure you avoid ambiguity when you do that. So I think about those things a lot. I find them useful when I'm communicating with people. I try to be very direct, very straightforward, not leave anything to chance. And it's been useful for me throughout my career. So. Hope you find it useful. Thanks again for coming back and joining us, guys. Don't forget to go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are on there. All of our content is available on there. You can subscribe to our newsletter on there. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our content, or to our platform. Don't forget to like and subscribe on whatever platform you consume our content on. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next time.